Hello, and welcome to Save Your Sanity Help for Toxic Relationships. I'm Dr. Roberta Shaler. I'm so glad that you're here. If you've just found me, I'm glad that you did. And if you're returning, I'm glad you found value and came back. Always remember you can invite people to join you here. Just have them go to YouTube. My YouTube channel is for Relationship Help. Have them subscribe or subscribe on my Facebook page. So, tonight we're going to be talking about something that underlies so much of life when we have a difficult person, a toxic relationship, and that is anger and anxiety. There is always underlying anger and anxiety. It is in the hijackal and it is in you if you are with a hijackal, raised by a hijackal, near a hijackal. Um, it's really important to understand that and how help to clarify what's going on within you in response to it and what is happening to you. So those are the things that are on the agenda for this evening. And anger and anxiety are different, but they're very related. So you know that a hijackal, a toxic person, a person who maybe has narcissistic or antisocial tendencies, has anger so close to the surface, so ready to explode. And they also have an anxiety that you may not recognize. And don't put your compassion hat on firmly here. Their anxiety is that someone may disrespect them, someone may blame them, someone may shame them, someone may not validate them. So they have anxiety about that. And they have anxiety about, do I have everyone and everything under control? And they are anxious about that. So they have anger and anxiety. And you, having been around them or are being around them, have anger that you have to be on the high alert all the time, anger that you're being treated unfairly, anger that you are being blamed for everything. And you have anxiety walking on eggshells, looking over your shoulder. When is it going to strike? Where's it going to come from? What's going to be said? What am I going to be blamed for? What's going to come out of thin air? So everybody has anger and anxiety. So everybody's walking around somewhat anxious and somewhat angry. And you might say, oh, no, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. You are. Because even if you have resentment, that's a form of anger. Underlying resentment that you have to be so careful, underlying resentment that you're going to have your phone blown up. Where are you? Why aren't you home yet? Where are you? With whom? All that kind of thing. The interrogation of being with a hijackal. Most hijackals, not all of them are like that. Some of them just simply want to go and do their own thing and they don't blow your phone up, but they also want to know where you were. So we have anger and we have anxiety. Now, anger is an arousal that comes on quickly in response to a threat. That threat may be in our head. We may think there's a threat, or there may be a threat. Anxiety is a response to the fear or worry about there may be a threat. So they're a little bit different than one another, but they're very intertwined. And so it's important for us to have distinctions around that. Anxiety can lead to anger. So maybe you're driving down the street, or maybe the hijackal is driving down the street. They're deep in thought. They're a little annoyed that they have to go where they're going. The sun may be in their eyes. There may be kids in the back of the car that are taking precious time that they would like to spend on themselves. And then somebody pulls out in front of them. And we get road rage because they were already anxious. And then an incident happened, and that anxiety turned into rage. And that internal anxiety shifted into an externalized form, which presents as anger. So it's all caught in there together. And that anger, when it comes out of that anxiety, is most often out of proportion. So they go off like a Roman candle. But the same thing can happen when a hijackal blames you for something and gets really in your face and starts putting you down and pushing you and doing all that negative that they can think to do and calling you names, and you react to it and you get angry, and then what? You become the abuser. So they can send all their anger your way. You're already anxious about what they're going to do, and then your anxiety and their anger coming toward you turns into reactive abuse, where you get angry at them, and you know how they play on that. That makes them very happy when they can push the button and you go off like a Roman candle. So it's a very intricate dance of anger and anxiety. We need to figure that out so that you can be in control of yourself. You're not going to control the hijackal, but you do want to be in control of yourself, because it goes absolutely nowhere good, does it? When there's anger on both sides, when things start to really get into it, everything, all bets are off, everything falls apart, everything has the potential to be dangerous. So we want to be very, very clear about that, because anger and anxiety can be a toxic situation and can create a toxic situation. And anger and anxiety attacks have similarities. Sometimes you're not really sure what's what. So we want to get some clarity around that tonight. And the differences typically are that in situations where you feel emotionally trapped, that's when you're going to have anger. When you really feel boxed in, when you've been caught, when there's nowhere to go, they won't let you out, they won't let you say anything, you're always wrong, and you get completely emotionally trapped, that anger rises up, and that's where we get the reactive abuse. It's not your fault, but of course you don't want to be doing that. You got pushed into a corner and you want to know how to handle the corner. So that becomes very important. And anger sometimes becomes a bit habitual. So we get irritated over small things repeatedly. And then sometimes we're angry at the hijackal, and we know that we can't be angry and express that anger at the hijackal safely. So we divert it and we get angry at somebody else. And we have to be able to take those things apart too, because anxiety and anger are very closely related. Very closely related. So as you think about that, think about, do you know when you're anxious? Do you know when you're angry? Do you know when the crossover is? Do you know what pushes your buttons to make you anxious? Well, hijackals do that all by themselves because they breathe, right? But do you know specifically what it is? Do you know when you get the most anxious? Do you know what events make the most anxiety in this situation? Do you know what pushes the hijackals' buttons to make them particularly angry, sort of angry, or not too angry? To become very clear and specific about these things so that you can control yourself and move toward a more empowered result. And that's, of course, what we want to be doing. We want to be emerging empowered. And that's the name of my community, safely off social media, on my website, Emerging Empowered Community. And if you'd like to be a member and have special access to me and lots of good things, you can go to joinintoday.com. Don't worry about HTTPs and all that. Just put joinintoday.com and you will find me. And if you do find value in the show, I really invite you to make a small donation, one time or a monthly donation. Go to patreon.com/saveyoursanity, patreon.com/saveyoursanity. It really helps when everyone gives a little and defrays the cost. So, anxiety and anger. Now, angry, we have antagonism to a person. We think they're responsible for our suffering. And so we direct our emotions at them, our heightened emotions, our arousal at something being unfair or unjust, and we put it in their direction. And it's often past oriented, things that have happened and they happen again and we're angry about them, or things that have happened and we haven't resolved them in any way, right? So our anger is kind of past oriented. It's already happened, and then we get the arousal in the moment in response to that. So most of the things that we get angry about have happened before and made us angry. And so as we begin to calibrate more and more, I certainly find this with my clients, that as they get clearer and clearer on calibrating what is actually happening in a relationship with a hijackal, they start to catch those things earlier and earlier. And they recognize what's going on and they can control their behavior in a way that makes them happier. Now, anxiety, on the other hand, is a buildup of bodily tension. And so it's just kind of in the wind, and it's unspecific in many cases. It's not a single thing or single thing you're concerned about. It's kind of generalized anxiety, and you're not feeling in control of a situation. You're not feeling in control of yourself. And most of anxiety is future oriented. What's going to happen? What do I need to be careful of? What might happen next? So anxiety is more in the future, and anger is more in the past. And we can feel anxious and it'll lead to anger, and we could feel angry and will lead us to feeling anxious. And then, of course, we have the hijackals, and their life work is to keep you feeling uncertain, confused, in chaos, not sure if you can count on their word, you can't count on their word. If they're going to have the story straight, they're going to change the story. They're going to accept that something needs to change, or they're going to tell you you need to change. There's just so much there. That is their life work, to keep you uncertain. And so that makes you anxious. There's a certain degree of anxiety when they are constantly moving the markers, keeping you anxious. Will they keep their word? Will they actually be somewhere at the time they said? Will they not rage like they promised? Whatever. So it makes you anxious. And then you get angry about that. You get angry that you're anxious. And then you get angry at them, and then something happens that they do, and boom, you've got reactive abuse. And now we've got a real circle built into this, because now they're pointing the finger at you that all those things happened. And yet they were the author, they were the button pusher to make all those things happen. And you know, it's at that precise moment when your reactive abuse comes out, when you just get angry and lose it, that's the moment that they call the police, right? So we want to be able to handle anger and anxiety. We want to be able to handle it within ourselves and handle it with good communication skills, being able to calibrate what needs to be done, what's fair to be done, what's wise to be done, and then to be able to manage yourself. Really manage yourself and your emotions and your thoughts in the present moment. So you become more and more aware. That's a lot about what emerging in power is when I work with my clients, because sometimes we're just so exhausted, or a client is so exhausted that they just want to leave. I'll go, I won't take anything. I just let me get out of here. And my task in those situations when there isn't a lack of safety is to say, no, let's be emerging empowered. Let's get yourself together. Let's get all this work done within yourself as you slowly get the work done to decide if you're leaving, and then to enact that, to execute your exit plan, um, all in good order. You want to be doing that. And if I can help you, you can use my new client opportunity at beaclient.com. Beaclient.com. So we got that cycle that they keep you uncertain. That makes you anxious. You get angry because you shouldn't have to feel anxious. Then they make you angry at them and you blow up, and then we have reactive abuse, and none of that's going to be good. And when you're attracted to a hijackal, many people who are attracted to hijackals and hijackals themselves, they have an insecure attachment style that's insecure or avoidant or dismissive. And that leads to anger and anxiety too. So that's one of the things that we have to work through in the therapeutic process, is to find out what happened to you that made this style attractive to you, and why can they hook you so easily? And then we have to pry all their fingers off you, and then you can make a better decision. So you get angry at yourself because you're not leaving. You get angry at yourself because you have to stay. You get angry at yourself because you have to leave. I mean, you can have the anger from the anxiety of wanting the anxiety to end, and you get angry about not being able to end the anxiety. And so it is a self-perpetuating thing. Now, one of the things that's interesting is in 2019, there was a study done by DeBlaise and Ruiz, and what they found was that people who have both, important to remember, people who have both anxiety and depression were much more likely to demonstrate anger. If a person was only anxious, they would have more anger, but a person who was only depressed would have less anger. So anxiety takes us out of the present moment and disconnects us from the present reality. We're already worrying about something happening. We're concerned about something happening, concerned about what the hijackal will think or what the hijackal will do or not do, all of that. So we're already in anxiety. So we're not in the present moment seeing what's going on. We're worrying about what's coming down the road, right? And so we get into that anxious place. And when you find yourself fuming, with no clear cause, you can't come up with a reason why you're fuming. It's usually anxiety, and it looks like anger, but it's anxiety. So have you ever had those moments where you're angry, just angry, and you think, I don't know why. What's wrong with you? I don't know why. Well, that's usually anxiety that is presenting itself as anger. That's why it's important to figure all these things out. When I'm with my clients, we got to figure out what is anxiety and what is anger and where is it coming from? Where did it start? So many questions. But it's so important to figure that all out. You can't do it any younger. You don't want to repeat these relationships with hijackals, but you want to be safe to do what you need to do in order to leave or extricate yourself or stay safe with a hijackal. So it's very important because both anger and anxiety are rooted in fear. They're just rooted. The anger is, what did the past mean? Why did that happen? Or what does the present mean? What do they mean right now? What are they saying? What are they doing? And the future, your concern, that anxiety, it will be unsafe. How do I keep it safe? How do I stay on top of all these things? How do I interpret what's going on? So very, very important. I know I use that word important frequently, but that's what it is. It's essential to understand the difference between anxiety and anger and how they meld together and how they are within you and how to respond to them within another human, and particularly how to respond to them within another human if that human happens to be a hijackal. Now, if you've been listening for a while, what my definition of a hijackal is, but if you're new to Save Your Sanity, hijackal is my term for people who hijack relationships for their own needs and purposes and then proceed to relentlessly scavenge those relationships for power, status, and control. So when I'm talking about hijackals, I'm talking about people who are in it to win it for themselves. They don't have empathy for you. They have uses for you. They don't have real love, real sustaining love to give you. They have uses for you. And they love to see you anxious and angry. Even though they'll say that they can't stand it, there's a part of them that has that, that hijackal smirk. I don't think I can even do it, but somehow it's a smile, but it's turned up at the edge. And I've told you before that in one of my episodes, you can go and find it wherever you like to get podcasts or go to saveoursanitypodcast.com. But I had a facial coding expert on and I asked him about it. And I think I mentioned this in the last podcast too. And he said that smirk, what I call the hijackal smirk, is the code for disdain and anger. And when you put those two things together, you get contempt. They have contempt for you. They just look down their nose at you. They discount you. And that smirk that comes when they think that they've got you trapped, or they've made you angry, or they've made you anxious, or you're now trapped in uncertainty and chaos and confusion, and they're going, "Yay, I did it. Look at that. Look at the control I have over this person." And for a minute, they're satisfied, just a hot minute, because then they get concerned that they'll lose it, and so they up the ante. But hijackals have anger all the time. Hijackals have anxiety all the time. They're always anxious about whether they're going to be respected or in control or adored or validated, as I said earlier, or that they are ultimately seen in a good light. That's why I say hijackals paint a public picture of perfection, but at home they provide a private place of pain. All their good look goes out into the community or their workplace, and all of their vitriol and pain comes home. And that's just the way it is. And that's why it's so difficult when you go to someone for help and you say, "This is how it is at my house." And they say, "Oh, that person is the salt of the earth. They're wonderful. You're so lucky to have them." And you just want to crawl in a hole. Do you not understand how awful it is at my house for me? And they don't, because they only see that public picture of perfection. And that can cause you more anxiety and anger too. Hijackals are always angry, as I said, and they're always projecting. Whatever they're afraid is true of them, they say is true of you. They're always accusing you of things. They're always finding fault. They're always blaming you for things. They like to shame you. All the things that they're most afraid of within themselves, that they definitely do not want to feel or feel they need to feel, they like to perpetrate on you. So shame, blame, judgment, criticizing, accusing, finding fault, dumping their anger, projecting their fears, they will do all of that. And there you are, the unlucky recipient of their anxiety and their anger. And you begin to fear that anger because it shows up in nasty ways. And even when they're speaking in a tone that if it were recorded, someone who didn't know them might not know that they were angry, but you know exactly what they're doing. And you maybe have experienced reactive abuse. You don't want to do it again. But you experience reactive abuse, and then you decide, am I the problem? Am I the hijackal? I'm the one who got angry. And then you start to blame yourself, and the hijackal blames you anyway. And it's a really tough place to be, which will up your anxiety, up your resentment, and therefore up your anger. So it's very, very entwined, anger and anxiety. Very entwined and very important. There goes that word again. Very important to figure it out. Because if you don't take the time to figure it out, sort out your feelings, sort out what you're taking from this, sort out how you feel about it, get some good skills, know how to communicate in ways that don't poke hijackals, do your very best so that you feel you have done your best, then they will always have the better of you. They will be batting you around like a cat toy, push you this way or push you that way. Or, as I said in last week's podcast, it's like they have you as a piece of clay on a pottery wheel, and they just push the vase this way, then push the vase the other way, just for fun, just to see what it will do. So important to notice. Really important to notice what is going on in terms of anger and anxiety within the hijackal, within you, within the dynamic between the two of you, because it is constant. It is a constant dance of anger and anxiety, so intertwined. So we have to take this apart and figure out what to do about things that are creating anxiety that lead to that reactive abuse, because that's number one. You do not want to get to that place of reactive abuse. Or if you've been there, you don't want to go there again, right? I did a whole podcast on reactive abuse. Just look it up. Wherever you like to get your podcast, just do a search. Or if you want to go and find it on my website, you can go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com, and there is that usual little magnifying glass so that you can do a search there at saveyoursanitypodcast.com. And then when you find those things out, when you've dug deep to find out what's really going on, which of my buttons are they pushing? Maybe buttons I didn't even know I had from my past or my childhood, and they're pushing them and I'm reacting. I could take that back. I could do it differently with a little help. And that's what I'm here to do, is to give you that help, whether you get it as a personal client, a private client of mine at Be a Client, or you come on over to um, my emerging empowered community at joinintoday.com. I'm there to help you at different levels, of course. So this becomes something you can do something about, something you can take control over. And when you get back into a sense of some control and understanding, some good communication skills, then you can feel like you can make good decisions, that you can take up a little more space, and you can not be knocked over by the hijackal as easily, and you can make good decisions about your life and what you want it to look like, what you want your children's lives to look like, and then you can proceed from that decision making. But the most important thing and all this talk of anger and anxiety is that you don't want to be in the past with your anger. You don't want to be in the future with your anxiety. You need skills to bring yourself to the present moment and know what to do with it. That is primary, really important. There's that word again, but it is important. It's essential to your well being. It's essential to your sense of self that you feel, I know what to do. I am in charge of me. Much as the hijackal wants to believe that they are in charge of you, no, you want to clearly know that you know what you're up to and you're not being batted around like a cat toy. So I hope this has opened your eyes to think even more deeply about anger and anxiety within the hijackal, within yourself, and what you can do is to now focus on that, to learn about that. I didn't have time tonight to give you a bunch of tips as to what to do, just that you need to recognize it, to make some inquiries into yourself, into the relationship. Where is the anger? Where is the anxiety? What's pushing what? Is it anxiety that's pushing the anger? Is it anger that's making you anxious? What is going on? And that will give you a good start, a good beginning into looking at changing the dynamic. So until we speak again, look, think about all that stuff and take really good care of yourself, because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon. Hello, everybody. Good evening. I don't see any comments or questions here, so I will just remind you that if you have a comment or a question, please put it in now, because there's 20 seconds from when you hit send till when I see it about. And of course, I magically disappear if there aren't any questions for 30 seconds. I will think that I've given you lots of food for thought, and you want to go off and think about it. Create Something Great says, thank you. Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for sending that note along. You know, I'm here every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific time to do this and to give you one more opportunity to have direct access to ask me questions. And this is your time. And so if you are thinking about the content and you don't have a question, that's great. I'm glad that I've given you something deep to think about. But if you have any question regarding a toxic relationship, feel free to ask me now, because this is our time together for the week. And always, of course, over in Emerging Empowered Community at joinintoday.com, there are conversations going on all the time over there, and people responding to each other, me responding to folks, you getting the opportunity twice a month to sign up for a group Ask Me Anything call by Zoom. So we get together twice a month, and all you have to do is register when you're a member, and you have access to that. All members have access to that. Also, you get new content about every 3 weeks. You'll get a new ebook or a video or something that's just for you. Those are important features. You get a 20% discount on all of my programs. That's worth it. So much over there for you. Alicia said, if you grew up with hijackals, I did. Is it common for anxiety and anger to be a baseline? Oh, sure. Imagine, if you grew up with a hijackal, you are always wondering, when's the other shoe going to drop? Am I safe? How can I make them happy? You can't, but you try really hard, and then you stay out of their way. So of course, anxiety and anger, because it's unfair, so you're angry. But children have those same feelings, and it goes deeply into you. That's part of the work that I do when I work with individual clients, is to find those places where it is deeply residing within you because you had these experiences when you were young. And that will cause you to find being with a hijackal familiar. You may not like it, but there is a deep, deep familiarity with it that you kind of go with. And we want to extinguish that familiarity. Alicia said, I think I suppressed my own feelings for so long that I have trouble understanding why I'm feeling what I feel. Oh, you are not alone, girl. Most people have subjugated their feelings if they grew up with hijackals because it wasn't okay to have feelings. The hijackal definitely wasn't interested in your feelings. And if you had them, they might think of you as weak or unnecessary or taking up their time. Nasty stuff. So then you don't even have time to figure it out because you get into anxiety. And when you're in anxiety, your brain isn't working clearly. So you don't know. So absolutely, you would suppress your own feelings because you're trying to make the hijackal's feelings more important. So you think that that will help. It doesn't, but it makes the hijackal feel more important. Oren, hi, haven't seen you here before. If you're raised by hijackals, is it common to think breadcrumbs are a feast? Ah, you must have been here last week. Yeah, absolutely. When you've been raised by hijackals, you think the smallest thing that somebody does for you is nice to you is a big thing, just like a little crumb. And it's not the full meal deal at all. It's just enough to keep you thinking, oh, they gave me something. Oh, they may be giving me more. But you're settling for so little. And if you had that when you were a child, it will cause you to settle for little in a primary relationship when you're an adult. You will keep thinking that breadcrumbs are the full meal deal, and they're not. And you may need help to make that distinction because you've been settling for what you could get as a child, and you thought that was somehow the way it was. And when you have adult capabilities, you can erase and replace that whole program. So that's very important. Alicia said, I think I just started letting myself be angry. Good. It's like there is a monopoly on anger within my family. Yeah, not enough to go around, right? Because that's power. Whoever can get angry or make people afraid of them, they have the power. But the anger that I think you're talking about is, that was unfair. That wasn't right. What happened to me was wrong. It shouldn't happen to children. It shouldn't happen to anyone. And that anger then is very real. And it's very righteous because it shouldn't be happening to children. It is inappropriate. So I'm glad that you started to let yourself be angry. And you'll have a few moments where you'll let it out in the wrong places. Just know that. But you're in a process right now. Once you find your anger, sometimes you want to spread it around or it pops out in inopportune moments, but you'll get through it. And just find that you want to direct it at the place and the people where it belongs. not at other people. But, get help. Come and talk to me. You know, to get in touch with your anger at what's happened to you is so important to improving. Truly is. FK, welcome. Haven't seen you comment before. I like how you invite us to take focused time out to think about our life. Must go, but thank you. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, it is important to take time out, to have time alone. I was just working with a client today who's quite young, and I said, "How much time do you spend alone?" And they said, "Well, I don't. I try to go out as much as possible and be busy, busy, busy." And I said, "I want you to get familiar with yourself. And I think you're afraid of who you'll find when you sit by yourself." And they said, "Well, yeah." So getting used to being on your own, getting used to spending time by yourself, getting used to journaling, asking yourself what you think, what you want, what you would prefer, how you would like to be treated, what do you value. All of those things are very important. And as I said to my client today, she said, "Well, I don't want to miss anything." And I said, "Well, you have FOMO, the fear of missing out. But with our work together, I want to turn your FOMO into JOMO, which is the joy of missing out. You don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to go everywhere you're invited. Sometimes there's just great joy in saying, I'm going to spend some time alone." Really important. Alicia says, "I think I'm so angry that I believed I was responsible for way more than was actually the case." Good insight. Could well be. Um, so that you became maybe fearful of that anger, so you suppressed it. And it's very good if you can get in touch with it. I really advise you to get some help though, because it can be a little volatile. So you will be going through a process and pay some attention to that. Create says it's hard knowing someone is a liar and a hijackal and wishing they would change, but they never do. It's like a scary disease. Yeah, that's a good analogy. You wish that they would change, but they don't. In fact, they're dedicated to not changing. And if you ask them to change, they're kind of happy that it really bothers you. And so they want to keep bothering you because that gives them power over you. And it is really sad. And it is like a disease. So, hijackals, maybe they need to go to a colony all by themselves and be quarantined. Wouldn't that be quite the place? So important. Alicia said, "I'm also angry that the hijackals didn't care like I thought." Yeah, yeah. Or like they ought to have. If the hijackals were your parents who were supposed to keep you safe and protected and teach you about a healthy way to be in the world, and you had hijackal parents, not a hope that they did that. So you could be very angry about what you didn't receive. Oh, Alicia said, "I got your book today." Oh, good. I don't know which one. I've written 16, but whatever it is, good. Because these things, I write these books to help you so that you will have a clearer understanding in a leisurely thing, not just listening to the podcast or reading something that I write online, but being able to sit with a book is important. And okay, great. Alicia says she's going to book a session. The disillusionment over the past year or so has been hard. Yeah, it's very much disillusioning, isn't it? When what you thought was so, you find out isn't so, and then you kind of feel annoyed that you thought it was so, and then you get angry because it wasn't so. I understand that so well. Oh, you bought the Kaizen for Couples book. Good. The reason that I suggest everybody reads the Kaizen for Couples book is because it has all of my techniques in there for communicating and handling conflict. Everything is in there. The reason I wrote the book, I wrote it, I think, in 2017 or I don't know. Um, I've written so many books, I don't know, but I'll look. 2014, here's the book, Kaizen for Couples. Um, The reason I wrote it was my client said, "Well, have you written a book about how to have a healthy relationship?" And I said, "No, I haven't." So I sat down and wrote it. So it's a handbook for healthy relationships. And you want to have that. You want to be able to calibrate what a healthy relationship is as compared to a relationship with a hijackal. There's nothing on hijackals in that book, but I've written 3 books about hijackals, so you can find those too. Hi, Annie. Hello. Welcome. Haven't seen you for a while. Michelle said, "We need to keep learning every day, and after some time, you feel progress." You're exactly right. And it would be in your own time, too. Depends on how far away, how long ago the feelings are, or the time that things happen to you, or they may be happening in present. You can't really digest them, but it will take time, and every person is different. So as you learn about hijackals, maybe read my book, Escaping the Hijackal Trap. It's a downloadable book, and you get it on Amazon, and you can just put my name in the Amazon search, and you'll find all the books that are available there. But Escaping the Hijackal Trap is helping you understand hijackals. And then there's another one called The Hijackal Trap: The Hidden Anger of Passive Aggression. Then I wrote a book called Stop That's Crazy Making: How to Quit Playing the Passive Aggressive Game. Now, why it's important to understand passive aggression is because all hijackals are passive aggressive. Not all passive aggressive people are hijackals, but it's very important to understand that component of hijackals. Alicia says, "I need the communication skills help. I'm used to habitually over explaining, gently defending, and fawning to hijackals. Looking forward to reading and practice, not skilled in adult communication." Well, you certainly have a good grasp and a lot of insights on what you have been doing. And now, as you replace those things with more healthy behaviors, you will feel more in charge, more in control, and more discerning, which will be really wonderful. Really good. Create asks, "Is it normal for hijackals to claim and argue that they do everything they can for the better, but have zero emotional quotient or care for another's views?" Um, it's not normal for them to admit that. Um, they will say that they do everything they can for the better. They will say that they're right. They will say that they're righteous. They will say that you should change, but they very seldom admit that they have zero EQ or care for other people. So at those moments, I would question it. I would question the truthfulness of it, and I would also question the hijackalness of it, because there are a few people out of the populations who behave this way who actually don't want to behave that way, but they don't know how to do it differently, and they can really benefit from getting some help. Anna, "A partner who accuses you of constant cheating or fear of you cheating is called what?" Paranoid? They may or may not be a hijackal, but for sure, if someone is cheating, accusing you of constant cheating or fear of cheating, they're cheating themselves or afraid they're going to, because that is sheer projection. Unless somebody has, maybe in a past relationship been cheated on terribly and it sets their fear up. But hijackals always want to be in control of everything. So if they can find something to make you wrong for, they will. They'll say that you're afraid you're cheating and blow up your phone. But usually when they mention cheating, it's because they're thinking about it. So do not say that to the hijackal, okay? Do not say that to the hijackal. Just take that information in and then be watchful. Don't ever poke a hijackal. Please, everybody, don't poke a hijackal. It isn't something that is productive. It only creates rage and it lasts too long. So please don't do it. Hi, Ekaterina. Annie says, "I use the forums for strength to deal with the evolving chaos. I love your style. My suggestion to anyone involved personally with one is run. They're dangerous. They are dangerous. They're definitely dangerous to your well being, but they're dangerous in so many other ways. And they're dangerous to your children. So people ask me all the time, should I leave a hijackal when I have children? I can't answer that question because every situation is different, and I don't know the ages of the children or the degree of the hijackal. But there's always a question to ask: would it be better for the children to have some time with just you, not having to worry about the hijackal? Or is it better for you to always be there to run interference? What's best? And that's something that we often spend time figuring out with my clients. Ekaterina says, why the death of toxic parents unblocks the memory of abuse? Well, you're safe. One of the things that stems from is until the person is dead, they may refute what you're saying. They may tell another story. They may take revenge on you. They may totally deny it, as my parents did, and just wipe out your experience entirely from their memory, even though they were the perpetrators. So after your parents pass, if they were the abusers, slowly you can begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, your body is not overproducing hormones. When it's not overproducing hormones, it gives you access to things you didn't have access to before. And this is a very good time to get professional help because as you get that access, you want someone to ask you the right questions to unlock that. So that is two of the reasons. They're not here to refute it or deny it or make up stories about you. And they won't tell you that you're the crazy one and it never happened. And he says, evolving chaos in the outside world. I'm not sure what you're referring to. There certainly is in our outside world right now. Maybe that's what it is. They have immense inner rage. And he said, yes, they do. And that rage, hijackals, in my opinion, and a lot of literature and research points to it too, but I'll just make it my own. They get stuck emotionally between 3 and 7 years old. So when you say to a 4-year-old at the grocery store checkout, "You can't have Skittles," and they throw a tantrum, that's almost the same thing that happens with a hijackal, isn't it? They do not have those regulators in place. They do not have the filters. They do not have the projection of what will happen as a result of this. They only want the gratification in the moment, and that's right, they have a great inner rage. Alicia said, I thought admitting to bad behavior was a reflection or self awareness. I'm finding that I confuse confessions for reflection. Wow, you're really doing a lot of great thinking these days. That's a very common thing to do. And always remember the other piece of that when a hijackal accuses you of anything, you can usually take that as a confession too. And he says, I call them black holes. I study energy medicine. Well, they certainly are. They're emotional vampires. I call them intimate terrorists. They certainly will just suck all the energy out of you and out of the room. So, really important. Alicia says, knowing about the smirk help. They really do make that expression. It's scary, but it does happen. Yeah. Yeah, they really do it, and the more that you catch on to it, you know what's going on. They're being contemptuous of you. They're gonna show you. They think they've done something that put you in your place, and they're withholding information that makes you squirm. Then they have that look on their face. Andrea, hi, I haven't seen you before. Is there any way to help them take responsibility? No. No, there's no way to make them take responsibility except courts. Court can make them take responsibility, which is why they drag out court proceedings and make your life as miserable as possible. And no, they will not take responsibility for anything because they don't want to be the cause of anything and they don't want to have any flaws. And that's the sad part about hijackals. They won't take responsibility and they won't be accountable because that would mean that they maybe made a mistake and they're not having it. They're absolutely not having it. And he says, "Believe me, I can laugh now after years of sifting through the insanity and healing the last 10 years." Yes, yes, Annie, it takes a while, and you're worth the journey for sure, and every one of you is worth the journey. So be sure to keep that in mind. Alicia said, "I feel rage, but to go on a ranting fit would not feel right. I can go off in my head, but others don't seem to be able to pause." Yeah, well, that's where working with somebody, a professional, is most helpful because you wear your friends out and they don't want to hear it over and over, and they can't help you anyway. They can only give you the benefit of their experience or give you a shoulder, but they can't help. So the best thing to do is to do all that ranting and raving and in with a professional so that it can be turned to good use and your growth. So very important. And he said, "I no longer keep company with them." Yay! Yes, by all means, strike them out of your little black book for sure. You know, when you find out that you've been with a hijackal and you work it through, or you find out you had a hijackal parent, you then most often look around and say, and that friend is a little bit that way, and that sibling is a little bit that way, and oh, I experienced that at work. And you start seeing that they're everywhere around you because you have been familiar. That happened to me. I was raised by two hijackal parents. I married a hijackal, divorced, co-parented, was a real hijackal magnet. And that's when I went for help, and there was no help. And that's when I really started to focus my career. I have a doctorate in psychology. I started to focus my career on making sure that people had this help and this information because when you get involved with these people, it's so familiar to you that you put up with it, and many people around you, even your best friend, may turn out to be hijackally. So it's very important. So good for you, Annie, for no longer keeping company with them. And Alicia said, "I thought because I experience rage or nasty and sarcastic thoughts from time to time, we're all the same then." No, yeah, we're all the same that we can be experiencing rage and certainly sarcasm. Sarcasm is the lowest form of anger. It's just another experience of rage, really. Um, Everybody experiences that to a degree, but knowing what to do with it for good is important. Knowing how to use that to heal and to help yourself come round and rectify your thinking and your expectations and what you'll settle for, all super important. And he said, "I find screaming in nature is helpful." I just recommended that to somebody today. So, yes, absolutely, screaming can be very helpful, or go chop wood, or bash the heck out of something with a baseball bat that is not going to be harmed by it. Do something to get it out of your major muscle groups, and scream is good. I it's during COVID, I think I'm like everybody else. I binged on all kinds of television because I choose not to have cable. And, I was watching a series, called The Bold Type, and it's 3 girls in their 20s in, a magazine and fashion industry in New York. What I love about it is it touched on every pertinent issue of the day really beautifully. But these girls, when they would get frustrated, they would go down to the subway and they'd hold hands and they'd wait till a train came in, and they're very noisy if you've been in the New York subway. And as soon as the train came in, they would just stand there and scream until the train left. Really important to have a way to let it all out. And he said, "My mother was Cruella de Vil." Yeah, she had a lot of iterations, that Cruella person. I'm sure she lived at my house too. And he said, "It took me to my 50s to put it together." It's not unusual, Annie. It really isn't unusual. So I'm glad that you did it that young. I've had clients who have been married for 40 years before they realize what's happening to them. Alicia says, "I'm a magnet for sure." Yeah. Well, your parents make you into one, and you have to do all of the changing when you realize what's happened. I had to let my best friend of 30 years go. I projected what I was onto her. I ignored the offness. It is startling. It really was when I had to do it years and years and years ago, but really healthy and wise to do it. I'm grateful you survived too, Annie. And now that you help others, that's a good thing. You know, participating in this conversation helps others. It's a good thing. So Alicia said, pleasing and appeasing keeps me from truly seeing the whole picture of people. Well, there's something to work on. Stop the pleasing and appeasing, and maybe the fog will clear a little more. So very, very important to know. How many times do I say important? People are going to start keeping score of that. But it is invaluable to recognize that you have a pleasing behavior, a people pleasing nature, or an appeasing nature. It will keep you stuck, and it will keep you less than, and it will keep you being attractive to hijackals. So you don't want to stay there. That's really important to move on. Create said it feels good to stand up for your right and separate from unhealthy relationships. High five indeed. Yes, it does. And you're not having power over anybody. You're standing in your power. You have the right to say no, thank you. This isn't working for me. You don't even have to explain to them. Just, I'm moving on. I'm choosing to use my time in another way. Very, very important, and all good stuff. So good for us to come to a place where we realize where our anger comes from, that we have it, where our anxiety may come from, that we have it, and then address it. Know what to do about it, know how to take care of it, and come on over to Emerging Empowered Community. Joinintoday.com. There's a reason I'm inviting you to do it quickly. Do it quickly, okay? Joinintoday.com. And he said, I wrote down all the people I looked for approval from. That helps when someone examines themselves. Yes, you're so right. I was, after my mother died, I had the experience of sitting down. I used to own a big yoga retreat, and I was sitting down in the yoga room, and it was twilight, and I was thinking about my mother. I was thinking about how nasty she'd been and all. And I thought, why do I care what she thinks? Why did I ever care what she thought? And the thought came to me, and I've used it in so many talks that I've given when I used to be on the road speaking all the time. I didn't approve of my mother. I didn't approve of how she thought or how she treated me or other humans. Yet there was a small part of me, the child part of me, that was waiting for the approval of someone of whom I didn't approve. And if you find yourself to get that clarity that you're waiting for the approval of someone of whom you don't approve, that can be extremely freeing to say, not going to do that anymore. Just not going to do that. Hijackals are dedicated to never validating you. They're dedicated to never telling you you're good enough. They are dedicated to that. Yeah, there'll be moments when they say they love you because they want something, but they are dedicated to withholding validation because they want all the validation for themselves. So if you sit down and spend time alone and realize that you are waiting for the approval of someone of whom you don't approve, I give you permission to walk away from that waiting. And so important to know. And Annie says, yeah, spot on. Well, you stimulated me to tell you that story, Annie. But yeah, look to whom you're looking for approval. Are they worthy of approving of you? And who cares? Who do you need the approval of anyway? Have your own approval. Do the work. So I'm so glad that you've been with me tonight. and that you've asked your questions. Invite your friends to come along, listen to other episodes, bring your questions. That's what this time together is for. And come on over to Emerging Empowered because there's so much over there for you, all different threads and people. And it's fairly new. So you get a lot more attention from me right now as it's fairly new. Create said, "Oh, thank you. You're a gem in the world, and I love you for what you do for us." Well, thank you so much. Mwah. And Annie, too, thank you for the thank yous. And I will look forward to talking with you all again soon. And in the meantime, take very good care of yourself because you're precious and you matter. Talk soon.